Hello, everybody. Merry Christmas and welcome to the very last monthly roundup of the year 2021. So it's been an exciting journey when we meet together with Belinda, bring you a monthly roundup every year and every month. And this month, I am super excited and glad to have Sehlby Hofer with us to talk about work, life, and balance. That's been the topic of the month. And my name is Debbie, of course. Sehlby is a dear friend of mine, and she's been a longtime YWAMer, has been working with member care for over a decade and just joined or recently joined the member care resource team for Europe. Has a lot of insight and wisdom and training experience around the topic of member care, how we should take care of ourselves, how we should navigate life and work. And so she's kind of the perfect person to have on today. And as you can see, it's just the two of us because it's been quite interesting trying to get people to say yes, but also be able to join on this, in this season, but also in this season of the virus. So we're just two, but at the same time, it just gives us more time to chat and to hear what Sehlby has to share a lot more. So welcome, Sehlby. It's really great to have you on the monthly roundup this month.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here. Some really, really fantastic content.
Yes, absolutely. So the topic is work-life and balance, and there are articles, there are short video talks, and there's been a lounge also where people shared a lot actually about this topic, which is really essential for how to navigate life. I see those three components as an approach to life, as a way of making sure that we're actually living and not surviving, or approaching life as an event. And so what stood out to you, Sehlby? We can start from anywhere, I suppose, but what are some of the key content that resonated with you and you could be like, yeah, I see that?
Yeah. Well, I loved Carrie and Catherine's video. I work with them actually on the member care resource team. So I had heard their teaching around stress several times, but every time I hear it, I kind of take something new out of it. And it seemed like a lot of people really connected with this kind of analogy of the pie that Catherine talked about, that our life is a pie. If we look at our time, our capabilities, who we are finite. And the pie is only so big. You can't make it bigger. You can't stack up more pies. That's what it is. So we have to actually work around that and be aware of our own capacity. So I think that was something that I always loved because it gives a real clear visual. Mm-hmm. And it seems like everybody else as well who talked around this topic this month, that seemed to really resonate with them as well. That this whole idea of, okay, yeah, we are what we are, we have what we have, and we have to work with that.
Yeah, I think about it as this really healthy approach to life, that also healthy approach to thinking about the word balance, because the word balance, I feel like when I hear it, most people think about something that's equally spread across board and held. And I'm like, no, I think it's actually the second part or second definition of balance, which is that everything has proportions, right? And we need to hold life in that sense, not equally giving everything our time, but thinking about it like, okay, what does this need and what does this other part need, and then holding it in tension as we navigate. But I thought that was really interesting visual to use in thinking about it. And also what you said about being finite, I thought, that's such a humbling reminder. Like, you remember that you're human and you're finite, but you've also been given resources, right? Or capabilities. How do we make sure that we honor that while still enjoying life and living it in a more holistic way. Great. Well, what else stood out? So there were some articles about, we were just chatting about Steve Mayer's margins, article on margin. What about that was interesting?
Oh, I loved it. I loved all the content because I feel like this stuff is the stuff that as a member care resource team, we try to talk to people about and say you can't do it all. And so I loved that Steve talked about margins and needing to put in margins. So we all have different capabilities, and Frederick talked about that. Several different people mentioned that, that some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, some of us are high responsibility. Some of us are, working behind the scenes. Some of us are really out there. So everybody's kind of optimum in the stress curve is going to look different. However, everybody needs margins, and everybody needs to create space for that. Like he talks about, in the LDC course that he runs, just putting in those 15-minute spaces in between the course lectures, and how that helps people just breathe and reconnect with, what's going on, and soak it in for a minute. So I really love that. He said that we can't keep adding things in our lives without letting something go. And I think that's really important to remember as well, that as leaders, as people, as moms, as whoever, you tend to want to add things in, something else needs to get done. And I think Carly talked about that in the drop-in discussion, where she's like, oh, there's so much. You can always pick something up. But you have to let some things go. So I really liked that when Steve was talking about those margins. It can be small. It can be 15 minutes before your next meeting. It doesn't have to, always be a large thing. But I thought it was so fantastic because obviously he's very busy. He's got a lot on his life, and he's doing it. So we can do it.
Yeah,
It was really good.
And I like that thought of small things or little things. And I think that that's where it matters the most. It's like, how do we approach detail in the smallness of things, whether it's 15 minutes, whether it's letting go of something in order to embrace another fully. All these little things that seem like duh or like cliche are actually super essential. It's like if you don't actually embody that approach to life, and I like to call it an approach because it's not like an event or something you do once in a while. It's something we need to really incorporate and integrate into our lives. And as you were talking about Steve's content, I remember John Mark Comer in his recent book, no, not the recent one, I think it's The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. He talks about how time is not something we need more of. What is important is to simplify life around the time that we actually have, right? And the things that actually matter. And I think, oh my gosh, that's exactly right. Like wishing for more time isn't a reality to pursue because that's never going to happen, but also just adding stuff without letting go of the things that are, or simplifying them, or at least that also is a recipe for disaster because then we get burnt out and stressed out and ultimately live a very unhealthy life. So I found that also super interesting. So Jim Steyer talked about a lot of things. And one of the things he talked about that I found really interesting was this mindset of a sustainable lifestyle or sustainable approach. When you listen to him, what about that was interesting? What resonated? Because I thought that was really, really a great piece of wisdom. Like, don't just do this because it works today. Do it because it will work in 3 months' time, in a year's time, probably in 5 years' time. And I like that long-term thinking or long-term approach. Your thoughts on Jim's?
Yeah, I think as as member care providers, we want to help people become resilient.
Mm.
And resiliency is more than just coping. It's actually being able to grow.
Mm.
So it is sustainability. How do we help people be resilient so that not so that they can, work better or be more productive, but actually live their best life somehow, as cliche as that can sound, how to be the best people they are. So I love that, Jim talked about, he said, you can be far more productive if you can move at a pace that you can sustain over time.
Mm.
So, you go alone, you can go fast. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's just there's all these ideas around sustainability that we talk about, but we don't often connect those into our leadership, into our communities. How are we living as individuals?
Mm.
And how is that going to be sustainable? And I love that you said something. You said, when you're in leadership, the more that you need to pay attention to these things more, because the job will eat you alive. And I was like, dang, Jim. But it's true. It's really true. There's always going to be something as a leader. There's always people knocking on your doors. So how can you live sustainably?
Yeah, and it's this thing of discernment, right? Like I think you mentioned earlier that the stress like curve of everyone, the stress point is different. And I think it's the same, I think about what you just shared about James' content. It's that you have to be able to discern who you are, know yourself, and go, okay, when is my job over taking my life? When is it eating me alive? And when is it that I have just capacity that is healthy and is sustainable? And I think about it that way because it looks different for everybody. And that's the beauty of it, that we can still, the fact that you're high capacity doesn't mean that you never burn out or you never get stressed. The fact that your capacity doesn't mean that either. It's really being able to discern and know, who am I? What has God given me? How do I steward that in a way that blesses the world, but also blesses my life and blesses God? And it's this constant, I think, not just awareness, but conviction about, okay, this is who we are, this is what God has given us, and this is how, or this is the best way to go about putting it into work in a healthy way. So we've been talking about the content so far, and it's super great. But I know that you really work with this thing every day, and I know that you're a mom and you a wife. So how have you seen or approached some of this in your life? Like any examples, any stories, any kind of principles in this season of life that you're like, okay, I'm applying that to my life because it matters right now and it's relevant.
Yeah, as you know, I'm married to a farmer. And I remember when we were dating, I asked him, how is this going to work? Because as a farming, is very busy. And he said, yeah, farming is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's always something to do. And that's why him and his dad actually worked out. And they said, you know what, as a principal, we don't work on Sundays. That's just something that we don't do. We have time with our family, time to rest, that Sabbath. And I really loved that. That was really important for me. And it's been important for our family. And I think that really connects with our YWAM bases and our YWAM communities as leaders. There's always something to be done, isn't there? There's always somebody that needs our help, or there's always, toilets that are broken, or, heating problems, or, discipleship stuff, or someone's lost on an outreach, or I don't know. There's always stuff. It's 24/7. And I think what's important is to know that we always have a choice. And so that's something that I have had to apply to my own life, to say there's always a choice. I may not like the outcome of some of the choices. They may not feel like I have a choice, because it feels like, well, if I choose to say no to this, then this, and this could happen, or this, and this will happen. But the reality is, that's the beauty of us being humans. We always have a choice. and our pie doesn't get any bigger. So how do we take care of ourselves? How do we stay resilient? How do we help our communities and our bases stay resilient as well? How do us as leaders stay resilient and healthy? So, and I love what you said, you know, knowing yourself is so important, because if you do know yourself and you know, okay, I'm high capacity, I'm high responsibility, yada, yada. If you don't know yourself, it's easy to stay on the top of that curve, that stress curve, where you think, yeah, I got this, I can do this. But you can't, nobody can. And it actually takes more attention to stay on the left side of that and to say, okay, you know, where am I? What am I doing? I love one thing, I think it was Carly said, it was either Carly or Claire. They were talking about how they actually have to so much bring the Lord into it and say, okay, Jesus, should I pick that thing up? And if so, in what capacity? And I think that's really important as well. It sounds sometimes cliche to be like, oh, you know, we need Jesus in this, but like legit, we need Jesus in this to help us learn how to say no, or learn how to say yes, or sort it out. So I think those were a few things that have helped me figure out how to do the life and the work and the balance and the kids and the, you know, everything. Knowing that there's always a choice, and knowing myself and bringing Jesus into it.
Absolutely. It's like, I think that that's one of the blessings that we have in our mission, which is kind of weird to say, but it's really that we do say we are led by God's voice, right? So we listen to him because we're in relationship with him, and then we approach life or act as he tells us, or at least we try to. And so I think that that last bit, it's like, no, yeah, you know, people say that all the time, it's a cliche, but it's not. It's actually quite key. It's like you can only discern, and you can only truly know yourself when you're in relationship with the Lord and he reveals that to you. And so that's the assumption. This is not like a go and find yourself and find your balance and kind of just do it by yourself or in your head. I think we need God's spirit, but we also need people around us. And so it's this, I think, holistic approach that it's not just about you or you and God. It's about you, God, and the people around you, about community as well. So thank you so much, Sehlby. I really enjoyed talking to you. You've shared so many great things, both from the content, but I think from your life as well. And I'm really excited about you guys' team and kind of the work that you put into that to make sure that we're more aware, more educated as we continue with the calling that God has for us. And for those of you watching or listening, this is just a tip of the iceberg, or a little bit of a taste of the content. You can go back on the website and watch all the short and long videos. You can read the articles. But I think that we can pause here for the year and say thank you so much for tracking with us if you have, and listening. And we look forward to next year, where we will continue with the monthly roundup. But for now, and that was my timer, but for now, we will say goodbye and Happy New Year. And thanks again, friend, for being with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.